Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional league, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
And thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss everything in the world of fantasy football. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
Yo soy Antonio.
And we are back again. This is our first show in 1 week.
Yep.
Because I unfortunately was under the weather on Tuesday. But you know what? This show comes at a perfect time, Senor Antonio.
See?
NFL draft happened yesterday.
Yeah,
First
man.
round is now in the books. We got rounds 2 to 3 tonight, and then rounds 4 to 7 on Saturday. So we're just going to pretty much discuss the first round. If you listen to the football podcast, we did discuss the first round on there as well. We're going to have a little bit similar format on here on this show. So first things first, we're going to discuss the top 10. We're going to stick with the offensive theme here because, basically the offensive fantasy leagues are the most popular ones. We can do we can talk about defensive players too if you want. But, first number one is Myles Garrett. Really great pick. But, man, oh, man, number two, what are the Bears thinking with Mitchell Trubisky there?
So, obviously, this is really easy to make jokes with, right? Because, we have. But if they think Trubisky's good, right? If they think Trubisky can help out Howard, if they think Trubisky can take, Alshon Jeffrey's not even there anymore. I was going to say Alshon Jeffrey, but he's gone. If they think that he can be the quarterback of the future, then congratulations. You got a guy that now you have a lot of faith in and he can be your guy going forward. The problem is, you already took somebody before who you were trying to help with that said quarterback position, and you paid him $15 million. And now you're going to pay this guy a couple of $1 million. You're going to be paying about $20 million this year alone in quarterbacks. And the easiest way to basically be good in the NFL is to have a lot of other players who were good but have the quarterback cheap. That's the Baltimore Ravens method when they had Joe Flacco cheap. That was the Patriot. That's been the Patriots model forever because Brady, while he makes money, doesn't make that much. That's the Seahawks model with Russell Wilson. But instead, the Bears basically say, we don't have talent anywhere, but we're going to pay a lot of money to the quarterback, which is basically the New Orleans Saints method, and that has not gone well because our defense is as good as if you and I decided to play defense. It's bad. So, with Trubisky, he's good. Is he great? Who knows? Honestly, who knows if he's going to be great or bad or anything else like that. But the thing is now you have him in a division with teams outside of the Vikings. None of those defenses are very good. So the Lions, they don't have a good defense. The Packers, we saw how bad they were last year. It was basically Aaron Rodgers and nobody else. The Vikings, yes, the Vikings have a very good defense. But the two other teams in the division aren't that good. And the quarterbacks in that division, basically you have one who's obviously elite, Hall of Fame going, Aaron Rodgers, great. Stafford, who's meh. Bradford's a little bit under meh. And now you have either Trubisky or, I can't think of what his name is right now.
Mike
Glennon, who are just kind of in that middle range. So the good thing with the Bears is, outside of the Packers, there's nobody really in that division that you think can win the division outright. The Vikings don't have a quarterback that you trust because Sam Bradford, as good as he is, he's going to get injured next year because that's how this works. So I can see this working out well for them. I can see this being something where, whether it's him or Glennon, whoever's the quarterback that does it, I can see them producing, a little over 3,000 yards and call it about 20 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. Something that's just like average, right? Not great, not terrible, but just something in the middle. And the problem is the rest of the team isn't that good. And now we have these jokes with Chicago about how they basically got fleeced by your team, the San Francisco 49ers. Congratulations, John Lynch. We do not laugh at you anymore. We now respect you. You're good.
Yeah, I respect you.
He's basically respected for a year, right? For a year.
Honestly, no, he's respected for actually, probably a year.
Like if he can do something like in this draft and now all of a sudden he, takes someone like Dalvin Cook in the second round or whatever else, if somehow he can like finagle that,
they pretty much will win the draft already if that happens.
Like, you can't really do much better than that. You got two guys in the top 10 who were top 10 prospects, I should say, in your first-round picks. So that's great for them. So moving on to the other offensive players, because I said we're going to do offense. We could talk about, like you said, Myles Garrett. We can talk about Allen. We could talk about people like that. But as far as offensive players goes, we have two players who are running backs. Well, one's a running back, one's kind of like a hybrid running back receiver. But you have Leonard Fournette get taken 4th overall by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, worst case scenario, the Jaguars have an identity, right? Because before you had the identity of Blake Bortles, but outside of garbage time stuff, not exactly the same thing. He basically got you points, which was nice if you're a fantasy football owner of him, because they would be down 35-3, and all of a sudden he's throwing 2 touchdowns, and you're like, yeah, good for you. But he stunk. So now you have a running back in Leonard Fournette who, was basically the top guy running back-wise for the past 2 years. You get a thing where he is going to be the workhorse. He's going to be the guy that produces probably over 1,000 yards. And, especially as far as rookie goes, he's probably going to be the top performer as a rookie.
Yeah, and right now he pretty much is the best player on this offense, which is kind of sad if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, they got good players on defense, but offensively, yeah, he's probably the best dude.
But, excuse me, I am sick. I'm sorry. But the Jaguars just a really great pickup. It will help out Blake Bortles in that passing game, because I really do think they have really great receivers on this team.
Mm-hmm.
Allen Robinson didn't really come on until late in the season. He was probably one of the most disappointing receivers in fantasy. Allen Hurns was disappointing as well, and of course, Blake Bortles was a bust in quarterbacks.
Right.
Leonard Fournette, I do think it's safe to say that he can be a late first-round pick in fantasy. Yeah.
No, he absolutely. Like, he is somebody who is going to be the workhorse running back who's going to get you a lot of yards. He's, like I said, like, it all depends between him and maybe Mike Williams, something like that, to be the best guy out of this draft. But he's somebody who you have no questions about whether or not he's a starter. You have no questions about whether or not he's going to be used, a lot. And, yeah, he can absolutely be a first-round pick, second-round pick, maybe if you, see some other quarterbacks, wide receivers that you like a little bit better. But, yeah, he's going to be drafted very highly and for good reason.
Yeah, and I think Leonard Fournette's going to be the workhorse back as well. And don't forget, they have really good depth behind Fournette with TJ Yeldon and Chris Ivory, who were really disappointing in fantasy.
Right.
I think the one question on Fournette is, can he be the third down back? What is he going to do on third down? I think he can do really well next year. He's definitely going to get a lot of touchdowns. And why would you not give him the ball in the red zone? Why would you not?
Exactly. And someone that you said you don't know if he's third down back, but one that absolutely will be. A couple picks later, we have the thing with Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey is somebody who, you have always kind of understood his talent at Stanford. He was somebody, whether it was kick return, punt return, running back, catching the ball out the backfield, could do anything, jack of all trades kind of thing. And he now goes to the Carolina Panthers, goes to a team where Cam Newton get him the ball, like I said, whether it's rushing, whether it's catching like a slot receiver, whether it's catching out of the backfield, whether it's getting a punt return. He honestly might not get drafted as high as Leonard Fournette because Leonard Fournette is strictly a running back. But as far as a flex position goes, this is probably the best dude in the draft, period, because he is Tyreek Hill. He is Danny Woodhead. He is Darren Sproles. He is, like, name your combo running back. He is that guy. He may not get you a lot of rushing yards, But as far as like everything all total, he's going to get you a lot of points this year.
Yeah, that's the important thing about fantasy is points. And I do like Christian McCaffrey. I think he's an absolutely great fit in Carolina. He could be, according to Mike Mayock, the draft analyst, he can be a 4-down player.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just as athletic as LaShawn McCoy.
That's the thing. He is the stereotypical deceptive speed kind of
for
guy.
a couple of reasons.
Because he is actually that good.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, oh, he's a little white running back. No. He will juke you out of your shoes, man. He is the epitome of like, oh, yeah, we'll take him. And then you're like, oh no. Okay, yeah, we need to keep him on the team. Yeah, no, you can stay kind of thing.
And we had 3 receivers as well going in the top 10. We had Corey Davis going number 5 to the Titans. We have Mike Williams going to the San Diego Chargers of L.A.
Right.
Mike Williams. And then we also had the Cincinnati Bengals taking John Ross.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a surprise there in the top 10. So we got 3 receivers in the top 10. I didn't think we're gonna have any receivers in the top 10, to be honest with you. But
of those 3, who do you think has the best year?
I would think it would be Corey Davis because he's basically going to be the lead guy.
Right.
Mike Williams, he's going to have a great year, but they still have Keenan Allen as well. But Keenan Allen, we don't know if he's going to get hurt or not. But he will be a great receiver 3 to get. John Ross, he is a speedster. I do think he will have games when he has 100 yards and a touchdown. But I do think with his game, I think you have to expect a little bit of inconsistency there in points. But when you overall, out of these 3 guys, I think Corey Davis, but Mike Williams is not going to be far ahead of him.
No, and Mike Williams is probably the most talented wide receiver in the draft, but you also have people on the team, Keenan Allen, Terrell Williams. You have people on the team who produced last year, or Keenan Allen who's talented enough. Maybe he gets injured, but he's talented. Davis might be the guy that gets the most stuff because Rashard Matthews was the number 1 wide receiver on the team. Now that he's gone, but now that he's not the number 1 guy and he got moved down, now you can see him being that. I would still say Mike Williams just because he has the best quarterback of anybody of those 3. And I just think Phillip Rivers will find a way to get him the ball a lot. Like John Ross, it's going to be A.J. Green's going to be the guy. He's going to get all the yards, obviously, because he's A.J. freaking Green. And in Tennessee, he will be the guy, but we don't know. Like, it's unknown if Davis is going to be that good of a wide receiver. Mike Williams, we pretty much saw him in college. We know he's going to be good, and you give him Phillip Rivers. So I would say he'd be the one that probably produces the most, the quickest.
I would be happy with any of these 2 guys.
Yeah. No, for sure.
All right, well, we're going to take our first break here, and when we return, we're going to discuss players that were the biggest winners and players that were the biggest losers last night in the first round of the NFL Draft. When we return to Guns to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. We're going to discuss our biggest winners and losers, or in other words, players that have an increased value in fantasy and players that pretty much have a decreased value in fantasy. And man, oh man, the player that I am most excited about in fantasy football next year is Deshaun Watson. I'm really excited about him.
So those of you who listen to the show understand my
Oh, yeah, your beef with Houston. Yeah.
Not Houston as a whole. It's more specifically one player.
That is?
Fedorowicz. And the thing is now, like, I feel like while he still will get yards, good job for you, CJ, you're going to get the points. Also, DeAndre Hopkins will, like a phoenix, emerge again. All of a sudden, he will rise, and all of a sudden, he will be a good wide receiver again, which makes me happy because one of my fantasy football teams is a keeper league, so I still have DeAndre Hopkins. So all of a sudden, that pick's not going to look as bad next year, so that part's nice, right? So that makes me feel good. I love the Texans, man. Like, they are not stacked or whatever, but, like, if you assume that Watson's going to be a day one starter who can come in and lead the team, this is perfect. Like, literally, like, it's the only thing they really needed, and home run, congratulations, slam dunk, good for you. You got this going, and perfect. Like, it's one of the best things I saw on draft day. Like, I equated it to, like, what Ezekiel Elliott was last year, because with Elliott last year, you basically saw it's like, oh, okay, cool. So now they have Des Bryant, they have Ezekiel Elliott, and they have, well, it was Tony Romo at the time. They have the triplets. Everything's good, and you knew once they got that pick, this is going to work. And while we don't know this is going to work, like, I feel like this is like the best case scenario, because if they would have taken Trubisky, he's a kind of project-y kind of player. Now, they've taken Mahomes, super project kind of starter, but with this one, it was like the closest thing to insert here and instant offense. And it's great. And I think he'll get, top 10 to 15 grade probably for quarterbacks. Like, he's not going to be like anywhere near the top 10 because no.
Well, he hasn't played NFL down
sure,
yet,
exactly.
so he can't have him that high.
But would you have said Dak Prescott was a top 10 quarterback last year?
Based off last year, yeah, I would say that he was the most efficient quarterback I've seen.
So I'd say
definitely as a rookie.
So I'd say it's possible, but I would put him a 10 to 15 range, kind of in the Tannehill-y kind of range where he's going to get yards, but he's not going to be like anything that's like mind-blowingly great. But the second person, as far as just like fit and worked out the best, was probably O.J. Howard, who we haven't talked about. We talked about some of the wide receivers like Mike Williams and people like that. O.J. Howard goes to a team that is already pretty talented, but not, anywhere near Super Bowl contention. But the thing that he does more than anything else is a security blanket for Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, not the most accurate of quarterbacks, like has a strong arm, but kind of overthrows people, doesn't exactly do well with the intermediate passes. But you give him someone like O.J. Howard, who everyone pretty much said was the top tight end in the draft, like whether or not you liked Njoku or something like that. He, a lot of the times, was the top of the draft. People thought he was going to go in the top 10, ended up going a little bit later than that. And now you give Jameis, along with Deshaun Jackson and, Mike Evans, you give him options. You give him something to where he can spread the ball around. And for Howard, maybe he doesn't get 1,000 yards, but I think he gets close. I think the amount of talent that he is playing with now, because you can't double-team Mike Evans because that's not going to work well for Deshaun. Deshaun maybe isn't what he was, 5 years ago, but he still is someone that can get you, yards basically running the night route and going down the field. And then with O.J. Howard, stuff's going to break down, and you get the little tight end that you can just throw to, get a bunch of receptions. He's going to be, top 5 as far as, people from this draft, whether or not you think Mike Williams is going to be the guy that, breaks out, or McCaffrey is going to be the guy that gets all these yards. Howard is going to get a lot of yards because he's with a really talented quarterback, and the offense around him is pretty good.
Yeah, and I think the loser from the draft is Cameron Brate, who is the current tight end for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I just got to say something. In our mock draft, in our football show a couple of days ago, we had O.J. Howard going to 19 in Buccaneers, and we called that. I was like, yes, it happened.
It's easy enough to say, like, oh, well, I think Myles Garrett is going to be the number 1 overall pick by the Browns. Okay, okay. I got 19. Like, who else got 19?
Yeah, 19? Who got 19 right?
You know how hard it is to get 19?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
hard.
It is.
It's hard to get 5, much less 19. Anyways,
so I think Cameron Brate is someone that has a very decreased value now because I think O.J. Howard is just more talented. No offense to Brate, but
yeah, he did fine.
O.J. Howard is just more athletic to me.
Yeah. So, and another player who, or I guess team necessarily that, you can make the easy joke about the Bears, the losers in this team. Trubisky's a loser. You can say that. You can say I can't remember the dude's name. Why can't I think of the quarterback's name for Chicago? The one that they have.
Mike Glennon.
Mike
Glennon, Anthony.
I cannot remember his name.
Mike Glennon. And that told you how much the Bears have done in the offseason when you can't even remember their starter's name.
Another person that I think is the quote-unquote loser of this draft is Terrell Williams, because he did really well last year. He had 1,000 yards last year and basically was the fill-in for Keenan Allen when he got hurt. And now he's probably going to be the third-string wide receiver because Mike Williams is super talented. He's going to be the number 2. Keenan Allen will start off as number 1, but he'll probably get injured by like week 6. And then that'll make Mike Williams the number 1 guy. So like with Terrell Williams, he all of a sudden, after being very productive and someone that you look at as, someone that can be your, number 2 wide receiver on the team, now he's going to slide down a little bit because, more options available for Phillip Rivers. Now, Phillip Rivers is really good and can spread the ball around, but I think that drops the value of Terrell Williams a lot.
Yeah, so out of all the 3 quarterbacks that were drafted last night, Mitchell Trubisky to the Bears, Patrick Mahomes to the Chiefs at number 10, and Deshaun Watson at 12. I think we agree that Deshaun Watson is a day 1 starter.
Oh, God, yeah.
But through a 16-game season, who's going to have the best year? Because I do think there can be a chance that Trubisky and Mahomes could play.
I don't think Mahomes plays. I think Mahomes is in the best-case scenario where he is just going to be looked at as the kind of Aaron Rodgers, bench guy. And obviously I'm not saying he's going to be Aaron Rodgers. My point is that Aaron Rodgers, when he was drafted by the Green Bay Packers, he didn't play in the beginning because obviously you had Brett Favre, who was, Hall of Famer. But Aaron Rodgers wasn't ready. From everything I've been told, it's basically that Aaron Rodgers, whatever he is now, that's not what he was coming out of Cal. They basically worked on his mechanics, worked on his footwork, did all that kind of stuff to make him better. And with Kansas City, you have Alex Smith there right now. He is going to be their starter, at least for this year, because Mahomes, as good as he can be, super, super, super raw. And somebody that, you need time to work with. So I don't think he sees the field outside of maybe a couple of games, maybe the last game of the season if the Chiefs have everything sewn up as they're going to be the, 5th seed as a wild card or they won the division, whatever it is. I don't think he gets that much playing time. Trubisky, I actually can see him being really good because, we'll call it the Blake Bortles effect. They're going to be bad. They're going to be down by a lot. So he can come in and get you another, call it 100 yards and a touchdown to basically boost those stats fantasy-wise. Because, again, we're not saying right now who's going to be the best quarterback as far as just people that can lead your team to a Super Bowl. That's not really what fantasy football is. Fantasy football is just basically you taking guys that can get you a lot of points, whether it's, nefariously or not. I think that, whether it's Trubisky or God, I could not.
Mike Glennon.
I swear to the Lord on high, I cannot remember his name, man.
It's Mike Glennon.
I don't know.
He's getting paid $15 million a year by the Bears to be their starter.
Mike Glennon. All right. So, whoever it is, I think they can get a lot of garbage time, stats. I think that's something that could really help them out. To where maybe that's not going to be as many points for Watson. I think Watson is probably going to be the better quarterback, but I think the one that will actually probably get the most points is probably going to be Trubisky. Or Glennon, or Mike Glennon. Mike. Hey, I remembered his name. Congratulations.
All right.
To me.
Well, I do like Deshaun Watson as a fantasy quarterback. I think I think you should draft him as your backup quarterback though, because he is a rookie,
right?
So he's gonna have a lot of growing pains as well.
Yeah.
So I think if you can draft him as your backup, and then he happens to emerge throughout the year, and he happens to play, if he happens to have a season between Dak Prescott and Cam Newton in the rookie years, that's a great fantasy quarterback for your team.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's going to be like those guys in the rookie years, but I think there's a chance of him having success right away because, man, he has talent on offense with Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins. He has Lamar Miller. He has a really good workhorse running back. He has a great defense, too. So I do think that there's a chance for Deshaun Watson to succeed right away. But, man, that division, the AFC South, they have pretty good, exciting young quarterbacks there.
Dude, the worst one, that whole
If
Blake Bortles is basically
if Blake Bortles improves, we don't know.
but the worst one outside of Blake Bortles is, I guess, it would be, I guess if you can say the worst quarterback, because Blake Bortles is the worst one in that draft. But outside of that, Mariota might be the worst, but he had a pretty good season last year.
Yeah, and they just got Corey Davis.
Yeah, so we always make jokes about the AFC South being the worst division in football, but, at least quarterback-wise, that's not the case anymore.
No, and if Fournette can help the Jaguars' offense a little bit, maybe it could bode well for Bortles as well.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Never know. Blake Bortles can make a comeback in fantasy. Don't know. All right. Okay, we're going to take our final break, and we're going to discuss the best players available for day 2 in the draft when we return to Going to Meet Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the Going to Meet Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. And day 1 of the draft is in the books.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first round, so we got a lot of talented players left. Players. Saying prayers. Going to Chance the Rapper concert, it'll make you say prayers. But there's a lot of good players left in the draft. And most notable one is Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
I thought he would have been I think he's a legitimate first-round talent. I thought he would have been gone by now. But no, he is still on the board. Green Bay has the first pick in the second round, 33 overall. This can be the pick Green Bay uses to draft their running back. And, according to Bleacher Report, or I should say Ian Rappaport at NFL Network, I'm sorry, it looks like that they're getting calls about that 33 pick, too, as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think some teams want to get Deshaun Kaiser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the funniest part of the second round, now that it's made, the second round a separate day, because before it used to be like the first and second round kind of went in the same day. Now they split it up to where one day is one day is the other. Is the 33rd overall pick obviously isn't as valuable as the first overall pick, but at the same time, it's become something where you give, teams, 12 to 14 hours, something like that, whatever it is, between when the last pick is and when the 33rd pick is. You give the other teams time to think about what they're going to do. Because if they're on the clock and, I have 10 minutes, I got to do that, you kind of have your board and you're like, okay, I'm going to go here. But you give them hours to figure it out. They're like, okay, no, actually, I really liked him. I want to get him. So now you're going to have these trades pop up. There's a lot more trades at the start of the second round because now all of a sudden, Dalvin Cook's still available. Joe Mixon's still available. Lamb's still available. And you want to get all these players because now you think that just because you get Dalvin Cook, now your team's going to be a lot better. And he's probably the best player still available. Maybe him or Mixon, something like that. Players that can step in immediately and basically be starters that can, get you a lot of value basically for being the top of the second round. Seattle or Green Bay, whatever, team basically, because I'm assuming one of them is going to take a running back because neither of them have one. Basically, the Jaguars are up there high in the second round too, but they literally just took Fournette. They don't need another running back. If they do, that's just levels of it, stupidity.
Yeah, we can have back-to-back running backs go 33 and 34.
Yeah. So, or they trade, you said Kaiser, maybe the team like the Broncos basically wants to, take Kaiser, even though they have Paxton Lynch. I don't know why they would take another quarterback like that. But, there's scenarios, maybe, Jacksonville basically wants to take a quarterback, so they decide they want Kaiser. Maybe they decide they want Webb, something like that. I can see all these things happening. For me, I think of the people that's still available, right? For myself, I think the person that I would take would be Dalvin Cook. I think he's got the best value as far as fantasy football goes to be impact starter going forward. Not to the level of Fournette or McCaffrey, but I still think he could be somebody that if he is your backup running back or flex, I think that's really good value for Cook.
Yeah, definitely by far. I would like to see Dalvin Cook actually with the Green Bay Packers or the Seattle Seahawks. I have a feeling that both of these teams could trade out of the spots as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the draft order from 2 to 3, of course you still got the Jets picking early. You got the Chargers, the Bears, the Rams picking early. The Jaguars picking early, so maybe they can take Deshaun Kaiser. Maybe.
Right.
Can you imagine that?
Maybe.
Maybe get some competition for Blake Bortles there.
See.
I'm kidding. I'm not saying that's not logical to me.
I don't know. Like the anything's possible.
Kevin Garnett.
Right.
When you look at rounds 3, the 49ers had the first 2 picks in the third round.
Mm-hmm.
No, the second or third pick, I'm sorry, in the third round. So, they can get some really good starters in there as well. But, there's a lot of good players left. Davis Webb, a quarterback, he's probably going to be taken in the second round. Deshaun Kaiser will probably be taken early. There's a chance that Joe Mixon could fall out to the third round.
Right.
But, he could be in the second round. But, yeah, if the Green Bay Packers, they stick to their guns and keep that 33 pick, I think they're going to get Dalvin Cook. I actually would think that can bode really well for his fantasy value.
Mm-hmm.
That can happen.
Yeah, I think, if you get him on a good enough team like that, it's, I think Seattle might be the worst of the two because that offensive line, like Green Bay's offensive line isn't great, but Green Bay's offensive line is fine. Seattle just basically takes dudes who is like, hey, have you ever played offensive line? No, you haven't. Would you like to? Okay, here you go. Here, be our center now. Like, they just take scrap heaps and basically make an offensive line. So that would frighten me if I was going to Seattle, but at least with Green Bay, you have an offensive line in place. Yeah, TJ Lang just left, but you have good enough people in place, and I think it can basically work out well enough if you go to Green Bay. Whoever goes there, whether it's Cook, Mixon, or whatever they do, I think they could actually have a good season.
Yeah, and I think so too. All right, well, we got the rest of the draft happening this weekend. I think it's still unpredictable. I think this is the most unpredictable draft I've remembered ever. I still can't get over Trubisky going number 2.
Yeah, man.
I think my Niners did a really great job. What'd you think of your Dolphins?
I mean, I understand what they did. Like, I understand the fact that they have someone like Cameron Wake who's, in his 30s. He's not any type of young as far as NFL, players go. He just came off of an Achilles injury. He had a really good season last year after the Achilles injury, but you can't exactly expect that going forward. So them taking, for lack of a better term, his replacement, I totally understand, and I like what they did with that pick. They could have taken another offensive lineman if they wanted to, but they've done that a lot, whether it was with Laramie Tunsil or Pouncey or even Jake Long back in 2008. Like, they've taken offensive linemen a lot. So to basically go defense and basically try and shore up, because the thing with Adam Gase, he's kind of an offensive guy. He made Devontae Parker relatively look good last year. He made Tannehill look a little bit better, so you can at least think that he can make the offense look fine. But, you get a defensive player in there. I like what they did with that.
All right, well, it is a very interesting draft that's going to happen. Of course, I'll be back on Tuesday to recap everything. You'll be back next Friday.
Yep, I will.
All right, well, that's going to conclude the show for us today. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. You can catch the show weekly on a variety of platforms. That's iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, and on the website gsmcpodcast.com. You can also listen to the GSMC football podcast that Anthony and I do. You can follow the Fantasy Football Show on a variety of social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram. The handle for both of those pages is at GSMC_F-Football. And Facebook, you can like us at the Ghost to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
And hopefully my voice gets better next week. So, I'll pull through for you guys. All right, well, I'll be back next week. You guys have a great weekend. Enjoy the draft. And I will be back to discuss everything NFL draft on Tuesday. You guys, take care.